I want to ask you about this, though. President Biden is cutting his trip to Asia short. He's coming back home. He's got some domestic issues to deal with. The debt ceiling negotiations are going right down to the wire. And, you know, the Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, has been warning for a very long time that, of course, if we go over that debt cliff, it's going to be catastrophic, not just for the U.S., but for the world, you know, that it could trigger sort of a world economic downturn. I'm wondering if people outside of the U.S. are concerned about this game of chicken American politicians are playing.
Yeah, you know, the people who know, Anne-Marie, know, but the people who don't, they are oblivious. They just go about their lives worried about their own inflation, you know, about electricity, food. But the government leaders, the economists, stock and currency traders, they are the ones watching. One economist is warning of a catastrophe. That's a quote. Another says that it would make the 2008 global financial crisis that, of course, we all endured, that we all lived through, look like, as what he said, a tea party. So that doesn't bode well if the U.S. government does this default. And, you know, remember, it took us years to get out from the global financial crisis. Basically, what happens in the U.S.? U.S. pain means global pain because the U.S. is the world's biggest economy. Interest rates would jump in the U.S., but then there would be this domino effect here in the United Kingdom, elsewhere around the world. Mortgages would rise for you guys. They'd rise for us here. The U.S. dollar would lose strength. Now, that might sound good if you're an international viewer, because then you say, oh, well, I get more dollars, I get more bucks. But that would cause volatility because oil and wheat, they're priced in dollars, and then people just won't know how to price those commodities. And then the fear is that the U.S. could default. Then other countries could too. So it's one domino effect, the fall around the world.
House Speaker Kevin McCarthy says he has directed his team of negotiators to work 24/7 with the White House until they reach a deal on raising the debt ceiling. The two sides met virtually Thursday while members of Congress went back to their districts for the Memorial Day recess. But they'll need to be ready to head back to Washington at a moment's notice. Both the president and the speakers say talks have been productive despite their disagreements.
Default puts all that at risk. Congressional leaders understand that, and they've all agreed there will be no default.
We are truly in perilous times. Times of change. We are at a point in time where there is not a lot of options for the enemy except to move and shake up the world. In the narrative that he has created, there are many different opportunities for him to stir up a great deal of problems and bring about the chaos he needs in order to bring about his order. And on the flip side, there are many who are waking up to the lies being told in this world and are walking away from them and choosing to be redeemed through Messiah Yahusha. The enemy hates this and will not allow the masses to grow in their faith and be removed away from his influence. So he will move against us. We are at an inflection point in this world, and while for me it seems so obvious, it seems for others, they still do not get it. The masses are still asleep, watching the safety nets that they have devoted their whole life to putting their trust in. Those false safety nets are falling right before their eyes. I speak in regards to America first, because this nation, Mystery Babylon, is the influencer of the world. The world is drunk off her wine of fornication. And when she falls, the rest of the world will fall with her. The world was designed in this way to work like this. And this is exactly what this nation was built for. The point I am making is that the people in this country are so asleep, focusing on their personal goals, trying to obtain this world and achieve their own personal desires, while also being so distracted by TikTok, Instagram, their streaming, NBA playoffs, etc., that they are not able to see how dangerous the times that they are in actually are. They are asleep, and they will be directed into whatever agenda the enemy has planned for them because they have not built themselves up for what is to come. The world is being prepared to move through chaos, and everyone wants to believe that they will be ready for what is coming. But there's something that most people do not understand about preparation. Though having resources in the beginning obviously can be helpful, having food and money is not the main currency that will get us all through what is about to come. Our wealth or power or class in society does not matter. Yahusha said himself, the meek shall inherit the earth. So what is to come will not be about our resources or our power or our wealth. This will all be about our faith and how we have built ourselves up to trust in Yah and his plan. And for the many that have heard these warnings, Many have deceived themselves, believing that they have prepared themselves for what is coming because they took the advice to prepare physically. But they ignore the advice about preparing spiritually and mentally. And unfortunately, they will not be ready. Now, I want to explain what I mean by all this in more depth, but I do want to provide more clarity on what is happening right before our eyes and what my expectations are for the near future. We have a known problem in front of us in regards to the debt ceiling. They have given us until June 1st, and this date is approaching very fast. I want to bring some clarity in regards to this debt ceiling crisis because as I listen to many people out in the world, there are not many people giving proper context of what all of this means. I hear many others that expect a problem, but many of these people use deceptive words like recession, which simply gives a feeling that we will have problems, but things will eventually get back to normal. I do not know the exact future of what they have planned, but I do know my enemy, and I know how he works is never clear. He works through lies, cover-ups, false narratives, and deceptions. This debt ceiling crisis is a problem, and we should all be prepared for what is to come from this. We just want to make sure that we are not following them down their narratives on the path that they are setting. So it's important that we all watch this from eyes of discernment and faith. So I want to talk about this debt ceiling crisis and what it is I expect and how it is I am preparing, in hopes that it helps many of you be ready for what is to come. Let's begin. Okay, so I don't need to explain that there's a problem with the debt ceiling. The news has made sure that we are abundantly clear about all of this. And if you're paying attention to this narrative, you know that Congress has until June 1st to come up with a deal. And over time, we have been in a roller coaster within this narrative of hope and then no hope. The main narrative is that the Democrats and Republicans are so separate and divided that they cannot come to a deal. And maybe by now, being that there are just days left before June 1st, they should be reporting as normal that they are coming to some kind of agreement. But I do not expect that they will reach a deal until the last minute, the last hour. So about this debt ceiling, please be ready for both outcomes. Now for me personally, I will admit that I do not believe that they will not pass any debt ceiling legislation. I don't see that being the narrative that they would actually put forth, because the collapse of the world because of them not raising the debt ceiling would have direct people that we could blame it on, and that does not allow other agendas that they have planned to manifest. So I am personally expecting them to come to some sort of deal, more than likely being short term, but I am ready for the consequences if they don't pass it. So let's talk about what happens if they don't. What does that mean? Let me say this clearly. If they do not pass the debt ceiling, then everything about this world will change dramatically fast. The United States currency, the United States dollar, is not backed by gold, oil, or any other asset. The United States dollar is backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government. It is backed by the faith of the world that the United States will pay its bills. Right now, the world runs off the safest asset in the world, which is considered to be the United States Treasury bonds. These are considered the safest asset in the world with little to no risk. When we reach the debt ceiling limit, that means the United States is not able to borrow any more money to pay its obligations. I think it should be common knowledge that the United States government spends more than it makes, meaning it spends more money than it receives through taxation. Every year, the difference between what it makes and what it spends is called a deficit. This deficit is currently projected to be at $1.5 trillion right now. In order for the government to make up the difference, they borrow money. And how they borrow money is through treasury notes. Countries, businesses, investors, and regular people lend the United States money relatively risk-free through treasury bills. If you have ever moved your investments to cash or money markets in your 401k, that's what you're putting your money into. Short-term treasury notes that are deemed to be relatively low risk. This is how the country borrows money. And so, if they actually defaulted on the interest payments on this money that they are borrowing, then obviously the faith and credit of the United States will be called into deep question. And then the price of everything goes up. What I mean by that is interest rates go up dramatically because people will want more interest for the risk of lending to the United States. And being that the Treasury is the benchmark for all other rates, interest rates on all other bonds will go up as well. And this will slow everything down in the world, causing a massive crisis. If they did default, it seems that they would be going by a strategy of civil war. It would be Republicans versus Democrats, obviously. As I listen to both sides of the political spectrum, it's obvious that each side are blaming each other. Once the effects of a default were felt, then this polarized division will spiral out of control, and there is a possibility for this narrative to go forward. So I am prepared for if they default. If they defaulted, this would not take me by surprise, and don't let it catch you by surprise either. Just be prepared for it. But again, personally, I don't believe that they would allow a default. This default scenario, in my opinion, is a little too easy to pass down blame, and they don't normally work like that. So I do believe that they will pass a debt ceiling deal at the final hour. Now let me be clear that when I say this, I do not say this with the same blind optimism that a majority of the world has. This is why so many people ignore this whole situation, because we have been down this road many times over the past decade, and it's always drawn out. But in the end, they always come to make a deal. So people ignore it as political theater, because in truth, this is what it is. So people don't worry themselves with this because they believe that they will make a deal. But it's much deeper than just making a deal. It's about how divided and contentious this debate is, and how far it is drawn out that is the real narrative. If you don't understand what the system is built by and protected by, you may not understand what it is that they're actually destroying. They are destroying the full faith and credit of the United States. They are destroying the credibility and dependability of the United States government and its leadership. So let me explain when I speak about the real narrative. What I mean by that is, though I do not believe that they will not pass any debt ceiling legislation, I do not think it will happen until the final hour or maybe a little past the deadline, and it will cause a stir up in the markets. What I actually expect next week is not a collapse scenario, but I do believe it is the beginning of the lack of confidence in our current economic system that will be the scapegoat for the chaos and collapse of the system that will ensue shortly after. Regardless, whether they don't pass the debt ceiling and they default, or they do pass some deal at the final hour, no matter what, it will cause problems, because our financial system is not backed by anything except the full faith and credit in the United States government. And the main thing that the United States government is making clear is that the world should not have faith in it working correctly, and there will always be a risk of them not paying their bills. What I expect after this weekend is that this coming Monday, there still will not be a deal. And because the markets are closed, because it's Memorial Day, there will only be 2 days left in the month. I expect when markets open up on that Tuesday, there will be tremendous market volatility, and fear will begin to spread more pronounced right after that. Once that fear and volatility has set in, then the narrative has been created and the job has been done, and has set the stage for multiple consequences. These are the consequences. First thing that we will see is that the Treasury rates will increase. People will sell off their bonds because of the risk, and when people sell off bonds, this increases the rate, the yield. So on Tuesday, start watching all the treasuries. The 2-year, the 5-year, the 10-year, and 30-year bonds will all go up tremendously. I will not be surprised to see the 10-year hit 4% by Tuesday. Second, the credit agencies will downgrade the United States credit. Look at this in the same way as if Equifax or Experian reduce your credit rating and what it would mean for you. Remember, this already happened once in 2011 with S&P, Standard & Poor's. This happened for pretty much the same situation that we're in right now.
For the first time in the history of the ratings, Standard & Poor's downgraded the United States credit rating late Friday. The agency said it is cutting the country's top AAA rating by 1 notch to AA+. S&P said it's making the move because the deficit reduction plan passed by Congress this week did not go far enough to stabilize the country's debt situation. S&P first put the government on notice in April that a downgrade was possible unless Congress and the administration came up with a credible long-term deficit reduction plan and avoided a default on the country's debt. After months of wrangling and negotiations with the administration, Congress passed a debt reduction package at the 11th hour that averted a possible default, but that did little to change the outcome. The S&P said that in addition to the downgrade, it is issuing a negative outlook, meaning that there was a chance it would lower the rating further within the next 2 years.
This action in 2011 had little effect because Fitch and Moody's, the other 2 rating agencies, they reaffirmed their highest rating of AAA rating for all debt that's backed by the United States government. But I would expect all 3 to downgrade the United States credit, and once this happens, Then we will see the narrative for economic chaos to go through. A downgrade of United States credit gives credibility for the increase in interest rates on United States Treasury bonds, because it is now saying that the full faith and credit of the United States is now in question. And if the United States wants to borrow money, they will have to pay out more interest for others to take the risk of lending them money. The majority of us have not lived in a world where the United States has not had AAA credit. They've had that rating since at least 1941. So a downgrade in their credit is a big deal. Now, other than those two consequences, you can also imagine a scenario where China, who once was the largest holder of the United States treasuries, now second to Japan. They're second because China began unloading their US debt some time ago. You could see and imagine a situation where countries like China and other BRIC nations started dumping United States treasuries because of the risk associated. This also will send shockwaves to the markets. I've long explained that we are in a debt bubble, and this is the major risk to the world economy. Once these shockwaves occur, then you will see the story shift to something else. Something else big would fail, and more than likely, it goes back to the banking crisis that we're in that has been quieted by bigger banks buying smaller banks, and all that noise has gone away for the time being. But the banking crisis has not gone away, and these banks are still troubled because of what the Fed has done with interest rates. That problem has not gone away. But the thing is that once a few businesses go under because of the economic turmoil that's caused by the raising of rates both by the Fed and the debt ceiling issue, then it's a trickle down of debts not being paid, then the banks failing, and something popping the debt bubble. We are already seeing companies failing. Companies like Bed Bath & Beyond, they've been holding on for dear life for a long time now, but they were recently allowed to fail. Be prepared for store closings and layoffs to kick off in June and July. This debt ceiling crisis is like a snowball rolling down the hill, getting bigger and bigger. There are a few different scenarios that can be seen and should be expected within this whole situation, and none of it has anything to do with things fixing itself and the government getting their house in order. I mean, they are very clear that we should not be expecting this. Nothing is showing us that there's reason for optimism. I mean, look at who they made the face of our leadership, who our president is. And the fact that he is mentally incapacitated is not even hidden any longer.
And by the way, I sit on the stand and it get hot. I got hairy legs that turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair come back up again. They'd look at it. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap.
We should absolutely not default on the debt. And I will tell you, I am more worried now that we might default than I ever have been.
Really?
And the reason is I don't think Biden is up to the task. I don't think he's engaged in the negotiations personally and directly. I think
they're talking and sitting and meeting every day.
Yeah,
it may be later than we want.
His mental capacities are markedly diminished from even a few years ago.
Senator, don't make me go through this.
And what makes me worry is that I think the decision making in the White House is being done by a bunch of 20-something and 30-something little Marxists who don't have an appreciation for reality.
Oh, I told you I didn't want to dig into this. We're going to get stuck digging into this. I mean, hopefully we get something out of
I can tell you the reality. All right, when the Senate is in session, every Republican senator, we have lunch together. We sit around and talk about how virtually none of us have spoken to the president even once. He doesn't talk to Republican senators, and that's weird. We all know Joe. I was sworn into office by Vice President Joe Biden. He was a man of the Senate. This White House hides him. It is weird. Lindsey Graham has flown all over the world with Joe Biden for 20 years. Lindsey hadn't talked with Joe. They keep him hidden. That's not disputed. Like nobody denies that they keep him hidden.
He's not doing media.
He doesn't do media. He doesn't do.
Just sit down with McConnell, and McCarthy is talking to him every day.
He also just went to the G7. It's not like this guy is hiding.
Hold on a second.
I don't want to be in the. I don't want to be in the corner of defending
He's intellectually
anybody,
acute and on things. Great. If he is, then he ought to do what he did in 2011. I don't think he is, and I'm worried because I think the young extreme staffers in the White House have no appreciation for just how damaging a default would be.
They're not hiding it. They don't want to talk about it. There's nothing sound about this current future, and it is unfortunately those most asleep that will pay the price for it. This system is set to be reset, and I've explained it in many other videos. I mean, we all know they already have a new system that they are waiting to implement. You remember during the banking crisis, the masses were all speaking about the FedNow system coming online in July. But because our attention spans are so limited and we get swayed by news cycles, the minute they stopped talking about the banking crisis was the minute people forgot about this FedNow system. Most people forgot that there was even a banking crisis just a couple of months ago. I mean, did you? There is a new system coming online, and what we are seeing in the mainstream with this debt ceiling crisis is the narrative that is leading the world into the collapse of this old current system and the introduction and acceptance in the new system. And it is important that you are looking at everything going on with eyes of discernment and not blind optimism that tells you that none of these things matter and things will eventually just work itself out. We are all being primed and conditioned for massive change. You must be ready for it. For me personally, nothing has changed with my outlook, and I do not like sounding like a broken record, but you should be preparing for a massive upheaval to your life. I do not expect that the world is going to flip upside down next week. That is not my expectation, though let me be clear that we are prepared for it if it does. But I do not expect that this will happen. Like I explained, I expect consequences to happen because of this debt ceiling crisis, not because of a default. These consequences will not be felt immediately by all, but it will lead to other consequences. And because of that, the masses will still not be moved into panic, even though the world and the walls around them keep closing in on them. There's not enough people with an understanding of money or finance to understand what would be happening, and unless it was the media creating the panic should not be what we expect to see in the near future. I mean, we may see angry people, we may see protests and unrest. If you start seeing protests and the media starts reporting on these things, stay out of it. Do not participate in it. As things escalate, stay in your home with your family, planning on what you will do to not be a part of the madness that will be coming. After this deadline, expect to see conditions escalate fast for the collapse. Don't think recession. They use words like that to give people false hope because this is what we went through in 2008 and we got through it. So if they use that word for the masses now, it allows them to know problems are ahead, but they don't really have to worry too much because they will get through it like they did in 2008. That's how they make people think. This will not be a recession or a depression, but a collapse and a reset. The conditions will be set for everything to change. We have never seen this scenario before. This debt ceiling crisis will bring higher interest rates and a downgrading of debt, and this will lead to an economic downturn that will pop bubbles. This is what you should expect from this whole debt ceiling debacle. Now listen, I could be wrong from this whole thing and how it all plays out. These are my expectations and what I am preparing for. But things could play out much differently. There could be an event that happens that takes away our attention from all of this. Or they could actually let this default happen, which I believe is unlikely because of their pattern. But they could actually make it happen. A default could happen, and if it does, nothing changes about what I have said, except you should expect everything to escalate much more rapidly. If they default, prepare to board up and stay in your homes while chaos happens in the street. Do not go out there with them. Do not go out into the streets. Prepare for the loss of your job, and in a short time, no food on the shelves in the grocery stores. If you're ready for it, then you won't have to go outside and fight. No matter how things transpire, be prepared for anything, because even if they don't default, regardless if it's in June or September or December, we have a collapse coming. There's no way of getting around it. The goal is not to know exactly what will happen and when, but to be prepared for something to happen, and that is the difference between the world and believers. They are not hiding any of this. Do you know that just last week, I saw an article from CNBC announcing the Bilderberg meeting that was just held in Lisbon, Portugal over last weekend. I find it interesting that this meeting was held in Lisbon, Portugal, because this was the birthplace of slavery, transatlantic slave trade. Anyways, CNBC spoke about this event. An event and group that used to be covered in secrecy and declared an unfound conspiracy theory. They literally spoke about it in the mainstream news, and it's not a conspiracy any longer. This group was founded by David Rockefeller in the mid-20th century to facilitate talks between the United States, Europe, and Asia. This is a meeting of all the top individuals in business and government, and they aren't even hiding any longer. Look at the headline. A secretive annual meeting attended by the world's elite has AI top of the agenda. The article says the annual Bilderberg event is shrouded in mystery, with discussions held behind closed doors and under Chatham House rules. The tech titans will be joined by political heavyweights including former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, and Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba, for a range of discussions spanning international relations, trade, energy, and finance. All in, around 130 participants from 23 countries are set to attend the private meeting, a similar number to previous years. Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla, BP Chief Bernard Looney, Total Energies CEO Patrick Pouyanné, investor Peter Thiel, and a number of EU politicians will also be there. The three-day event, which this year runs from Thursday to Sunday, is shrouded in mystery with clandestine talks held behind closed doors and subject to Chatham House rules, meaning the identity and affiliation of speakers must not be disclosed. That has sparked conspiracy theories, similar to those leveled against high-level meetings like the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, by those who claim attendees are seeking to establish a new world order. However, the event's organizers say that the discreet nature of it is allowed for greater freedom of discussion. Mind you, this is CNBC. This is their article. So what is on the agenda in 2023? Key topics up for discussion at this year's meeting were published by its organizers on Thursday, giving an insight into what it deems the most pressing issues in global affairs. AI, banking system, China, energy transition, Europe, fiscal challenges, India, industrial policy and trade, NATO, Russia, transnational threats, Ukraine, United States leadership. There it is. And this is the reason I brought it up. Look at what is at the end of this list. Well, first, all the countries listed as topics are countries either in war or currently war is being provoked to be in the near future. They don't list anything specific about the countries that are pressing issues except for when they get to the United States. And they tell us it's about its leadership. They discuss United States leadership because we are about to enter a world where the world is not looking for the United States to lead, but to move away from leadership. Notice that they are also talking about the banking system. They are not making it a secret that the plans for tomorrow are being discussed today. Again, this was an article from CNBC. If you are not mentally prepared for what they are doing, they have a plan for you to direct you down the path that they need to lead the world down. And it's up to you to decide if you're going to follow them or follow Yah. It is important as we move forward during these times that you are moving according to reality and not according to the world that you want to believe in. I am not telling you to quit your job or quit school and give up on your life, but I am telling you that you need to make sure that you are living your life with regard to the Most High and make sure that you are living for His will and living according to what He desires for you. For many of you, if you devoted just half or even a quarter of the time you have given to your secular career goals or the amount of time you have given to social media, can you imagine how much closer you would be to the Most High if you gave Him that time? If you're not ready for what is coming, that will be on you. What is coming will separate those who have true faith and trust in Yah in their hearts from those who say it with their mouths but don't truly have it in their hearts. This is not a game, and too many people believe they have faith, but when trial and tribulation comes, they run in fear and doubt, and you cannot operate with that mindset in this coming season. The first thing people need to do is live in reality and understand that the world is not going to get better. You can ignore the world all around you all you want. That's your choice. You can act like these events aren't forming and that these risks are not even there. But that does not change anything about our reality. It just affects whether you are ready for what's coming or not. Last week, I spent a great deal of time explaining the strong delusion. And it is this delusion that has the majority of the people distracted and unaware, because the mainstream wants people reactive and not proactive. They will only tell you and let you know that there is a problem when the problem is at the door and there is little for you to do to shield yourself from it. You cannot operate in this way. Please know and understand this clearly, and I know this may be hard for some of you to hear. If you have all these big goals that have to do with how you are going to obtain this world, you have wasted your time and you will not be ready. This world is changing. And if you're not ready for that change, you're done. If you are ready for the change and planning to adapt and assimilate with their change, you're still done. The only victors will be those who have found their true rest in Messiah and are all about living according to Yah's will, and they have made his kingdom their priority. I mean, I get it. I get that we have to live in this world and we have to work in it. But that does not affect how much of a priority we make Yah's kingdom for our life. Because when you're living for his kingdom, you are living in an expectation for change, and you trust that he will see you out of it. I'm not talking about blind optimism that falsely tells people that no matter what, you're going to be okay. That is not true, and you should not let those thoughts deceive you. Everyone will not be okay. Are you prepared for what the collapse means for your job? Listen, many of you probably won't have one. Your education, also, it doesn't matter. They are planning to replace you with artificial intelligence. You have to deal with that and understand there's no way of getting around it. Your money you have saved does not matter. This debt ceiling crisis is all about severely reducing the value of it. I mean, nothing about today will matter tomorrow. And it is important that people come into this reality now. This is not fear-mongering. I've made many videos providing concrete evidence of this, but I base this from what the leaders of the world have currently been saying. The same people who go to these secret meetings like Bilderberg, they also write books about what is coming too. There is so much to the agenda, and I have spoken about it in multiple times in different videos. There is a massive agenda leading to a great reset that will lead to a new world order, and you cannot escape it if you are not devoting your life to Yah. They plan to move everyone by fear and desperation, and you can imagine how that will go for the high percentage of people that will be completely blindsided and don't have a clue about what is coming. They're going to be led into deep problems. I mean, most of the younger generation don't even really understand about this debt ceiling crisis and that it's really a big issue. But for those of us that at least know about what is coming, we are not asleep, so we can make sure that we are not being guided by these false ones. When I see all these agendas forming against us, I instantly go back to 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 when the Apostle Paul is talking about the day of Yah. And though I do not think that what will happen is that day, in my opinion, what he says still applies. But concerning the times and the seasons, brethren, you have no need that I should write to you, for you yourselves know perfectly that the day of Yahuwah so comes as a thief in the night. For when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them as labor pains upon a pregnant woman, and they shall not escape. But you, brethren, are not in darkness, so that this day should overtake you as a thief. You are all sons of light and sons of the day. We are not of the night, nor of the darkness. Therefore, let us not sleep as others do, but let us watch and be sober. For those who sleep, sleep at night, and those who get drunk are drunk at night. But let us who are of the day be sober, putting on the breastplate of faith and love, and as a helmet the hope of salvation. For Elohim did not appoint us to wrath, but to obtain salvation through our Adon, Yahusha the Messiah, who died for us, that whether we wake or sleep, we should live together with him. Therefore comfort each other and edify one another, just as you also are doing. That's 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verses 1 through 11. You see, the difference between us and everyone else is that we are not asleep. We are not in the dark. These things will not come upon us like a thief in the night. We are awake and we see it coming, and therefore these things will not overtake us. That is not to say that what is coming will not affect you negatively. It is saying that when the storm does come, because your faith is strong, you will know how to depend on Yah to cover you through these storms. And this trust is not something that often develops overnight, especially when you come from a background of distrust and lack of faith. But this faith is what is required of us, and it will be the first thing that we will need to access as these agendas begin to unfold. Think about how Yahusha feels about our fear. In Mark chapter 4, verses 35 through 41, it says, "On the same day, when evening had come, he said to them, 'Let us cross over to the other side.' Now, when they had left the multitude, they took him along in the boat as he was, and other little boats were also with him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves beat into the boat, so that it was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep on a pillow. And they awoke him and said to him, 'Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?' Then he arose and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. But he said to them, "Why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith?" And they feared exceedingly and said to one another, "Who can this be, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" You see, he doesn't want to see your fear or your doubt. Your fear and your doubt doesn't have a place in what is coming to this world. Fear, anxiety, and doubt, these are all symptoms of having a lack of faith and trust in the Most High. And those of us who love him and believe in his promises must right now prepare ourselves to walk through the faith that we claim. But without faith, it is impossible to please him. For he who comes to Elohim must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. By faith, Noah, being divinely warned of things not yet seen, moved with godly fear, prepared an ark for the saving of his household, by which he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness which is according to faith. That's Hebrews chapter 11, verses 6 and 7. You cannot please him by walking in doubt of him. Acting as if you are unsure that he will provide is not good. If when the storm comes, you doubt he is there, that's not good. Please understand and please make sure that you are not tying your material possessions and your status and place in this world in with your faith and relationship with Yah. Be prepared to lose those things that don't matter. All these things that come from this wicked system will not come with those who come into Yah's kingdom. He does not care about any of these things. So just because you've lost your job and lost money, this does not mean that you're hopeless and desperate. It means that you need to have faith and trust and depend on Yah to pull you out of whatever is coming. This is why Yahusha said, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." That's Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 through 21. Everything I've been talking about is about them breaking in and stealing the master's treasures. And because the unfortunate truth is that their heart is where their treasure is, the majority of people will be taken for a ride that leads to destruction. But if you've been laying up for yourselves treasures in heaven, building up your faith and getting stronger in your trust in him, when these thieves come, first off, they will not catch you off guard and surprise you. And secondly, you will not be moved by them because your heart is not attached. The debt ceiling crisis is real, and it is leading to something greater. And it's up to you right now to build your trust up in Yah and depend on him for all. Learn to understand him and what he desires for us. Understand his promises for us. When you have this understanding, it helps build your trust in what he is doing and why. This is not to say that you won't make mistakes. The disciples were directly with him and they made mistakes. The point is not about the mistakes, but about how you will know how to lean and depend on him to pull you up out of it all. He does not want us to worry, so we must not worry. Yahusha said, "Therefore I say to you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, nor about your body, what you will put on. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air, for they neither sow nor reap, nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they? Which of you, by worrying, can add 1 cubit to his stature? So why do you worry about clothing? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. And yet I say to you that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Now if Elohim so clothed the grass of the field, which today is, and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, will he not much more clothe you, O you of little faith? Therefore do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For after all these things the Gentiles seek. For your heavenly Father knows that you need all these things. But seek first the kingdom of Elohim and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you. Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about its own things. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble. As Matthew chapter 6, verses 25 through 34. So listen, do not worry. We know about what is happening, and we are ready for it. We should have faith and trust in Yah that he will see us through. There is no reason to get caught up in their lives and in their distractions. Be ready for problems, and when they come, they will not catch you off guard and make you reactive, waiting for the system to provide the answers. The difference between believers and the rest of the world is they will be looking for the system to provide them guidance and answers. Only thing we'll be looking at the system for is to tell us where we should not be going and what we will not be doing or trusting in. I have made this video to tell you to not fear what is coming, but live in faith and trust in the Most High that He will sustain you and carry you through. This is the time where our faith in Yah, our dependence on Him, our allowing His Spirit to lead and guide us is most needed. This is the time where all of this will matter more than ever. Do not follow the world and what they will say and do. Do not worry about your money. Do not worry about your situation. All of these things have to happen in order for us to get to the true promises that await us. So please, endure and overcome. Please, trust in Yah and prepare yourself for His kingdom. Be blessed. Hallelujah. Praise Yah. Okay, thanks again for watching. If this has blessed you, please make sure to like it and share it with others. If you haven't done so already, please make sure to subscribe to this channel. Yah willing, I upload every Friday. Also, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel on Facebook and Instagram, as well as on my website, truthunedited.com. As always, I'd like to thank all who donate and contribute to this ministry. Your donations are truly a blessing to this ministry, and they help very much. Thank you for your love and support and letting our Father use you. You are truly a blessing, and I really appreciate your support. Be blessed. Okay. Thanks again, everyone, for watching. I love you all.